The low-slung, cherry-red pickup, dusted with the fine ochre powder of the Arizona desert, shuddered to a halt in the driveway of the familiar suburban home. Captain James A. Smith, age 38, killed the engine and let the silence wash over him. A profound, almost unsettling quiet after 2 grueling weeks, battling the apocalyptic flames of a multi-state wildfire mission. His body was a landscape of bruises and exhaustion, his mind still cycling through the screams of the siren and the roar of the inferno. But the sight of the modest 2-story house, his childhood sanctuary, instantly calmed the tremor in his hands. He was home. A wave of protective filial warmth washed over him, a stark contrast to the destructive heat he had just escaped. He reached into the back seat, pulling out a small, velvet-lined box. James, having just received a hefty bonus for his crew's heroic deployment, had tracked it down. He imagined the pure, unmasked joy that would light up her face, a light he hadn't allowed himself to miss fully until this moment. Swinging the customized aluminum toolbox and his duffel bag onto the cracked asphalt, James noted the first anomaly. The porch light, usually set on a timer to cast a welcoming amber glow after dusk, was dark. It was nearly 9 in the evening. More troubling, there was no scent of life. Mary was famous for her famous Texas chili, a batch of which she meticulously prepared any time he was due back, filling the cul-de-sac with the aroma of cumin, beef, and comfort. Tonight, the air was still cold and strangely vacant. He pushed open the gate, the rusted hinge groaning a mournful protest that seemed too loud in the heavy silence. The back door, which Mary habitually locked with a triple bolt after sunset, was merely ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning him inside. A knot of unease, tighter than any fear he'd faced on the fire line, began to coil in his gut. He stepped inside, calling out, "Mom?" Mary, the sound of his own voice felt hollow, swallowed instantly by the deserted space. The living room was tidy, almost too tidy, but a layer of fine dust filled the mahogany side tables, suggesting a lack of recent movement. He flipped the light switch in the kitchen, and the sudden fluorescent glare revealed a scene that made his brow furrow with confusion. The fridge, it was always fully stocked, Mary insisting on cooking for herself despite his repeated offers to hire a full-time chef. Now, the interior was desolate. A carton of expired milk, a few crumpled paper napkins, and a single bruised red apple sat on the middle shelf. Nothing else. No meat, no eggs, no vegetables. It was the inventory of a home that hadn't been shopped for in weeks. This was illogical, bordering on the impossible. Every month, on the first, like clockwork, he electronically transferred $8,000, a substantial sum far exceeding her needs, into her checking account, ensuring she lived not just comfortably, but Mary, ever frugal, always made sure she had enough for the whole street. Before he could process the sheer, chilling absurdity of the barren kitchen, the doorbell chimed, a small, tentative sound. James hurried to the door, finding Ruth Jackson, their sweet, 67-year-old neighbor from across the street, standing there, her face etched with deep worry. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she clutched a thermal travel mug as if for moral support. "James, my dear boy, thank God you're back," she whispered, her voice cracking. She didn't embrace him, but grasped his forearm tightly. "It's Mary." James's mouth went dry. "Ruth Jackson, where is she?" The neighbor took a shuddering breath. "She's been passing through the neighborhood, James, for a month now, asking, quietly. She's been asking for leftovers, canned goods." The words hit him like a physical blow. His mother, the proud, resilient woman who raised him alone after his father died on duty, begging for scraps. "That's ridiculous. Ruth Jackson. I send her more money than she can spend." Ruth Jackson shook her head slowly, a profound sadness in her gaze. "I thought so too. James, I see the money you transfer. But she's so thin, so very frail. She looks like she's aged 10 years in a month." She's over at Lisa Hernandez's now, down by the oak tree. The polished leather of James's duty boots pounded the sidewalk as he ran, ignoring the residual exhaustion in his legs. The weight of the world felt concentrated in his chest, a desperate, choking panic overriding his professional training. He rounded the corner by the Old Town Square oak tree and saw the porch lights of Lisa Hernandez's house. There, huddled on the porch swing, was the figure of his mother. It was undoubtedly Mary, but the sight was heartbreaking. She was wrapped in a threadbare shawl he didn't recognize. Her elegant spine bowed, her usually vibrant silver hair dull and unkempt. She was delicately holding a chipped ceramic cup, a cup of something thin and pale, like broth. Her face was gaunt, the skin pale and drawn tightly across her high cheekbones. She seemed fragile, breakable, like ancient porcelain. "Ma," he roared, his voice catching in his throat. She turned her head slowly, her eyes wide with fear and then instantly filling with an overwhelming shame. The fragile cup rattled in her trembling hands. She tried to stand but stumbled, instinctively trying to conceal herself, to appear invisible. "James, my boy, you." He covered the distance in 2 strides, engulfing her in a hug that felt wrong. Where was the reassuring bulk, the solid strength he remembered? She was just bone and a faint, musty smell of neglect. He felt her whole body shake, dry, rasping sobs racking her chest. "I'm so sorry, James. I'm so sorry you have to see me like this," she managed to whisper, her voice thin and ashamed. "I've failed you." His heart fractured, piece by piece, as he held her tighter in embarrassment. How could she possibly think this was her failure? Lisa Hernandez, a younger neighbor, emerged from the house, her eyes puffy from crying. "Come inside, Captain Smith. I just made her some simple vegetable soup." They moved Mary into Lisa Hernandez's brightly lit kitchen. The smell of fresh bread and simmering spices, a normal, comforting domestic scent, felt like an accusation. Mary sat down at the table, picking up the heavy spoon with hesitant, shaky hands. She began to eat, slowly, deliberately, as if rationing the single spoonful of warm liquid. Tears mixed with the steam rising from the bowl. James felt a fury begin to simmer beneath the shock. "Mom, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you text?" Mary's eyes were fixed on the soup bowl. "I tried, James, so many times." James pulled out her ancient, battered flip phone from the pocket of her shawl. The screen was cracked, barely functional. He tried to dial his number. It went straight to a busy signal. Confused, he took Lisa Hernandez's tablet and logged into Mary's email account, which she used to track his transfers. What he saw drained the blood from his face. Dozens of emails, all sent from her account to his over the past 5 weeks, escalating urgency. "James, I haven't eaten a full meal in 3 days. The pantry is locked. Please help me. James, I am scared. I feel weak. I need to buy groceries. James, I think I'm sick. I can't reach you." Each unread, unanswered plea was a blade twisting in his soul. How had he not seen these? His wife, Jennifer Miller, handled his personal communications while he was on deployment, screening non-urgent messages. Mary Smith mother, age 72, frail, pale skin, silver hair, wearing a threadbare shawl, and looking thin and gaunt. A cold, hard certainty hit him. This wasn't a system malfunction. This was intentional. He grabbed his own state-of-the-art smartphone, navigated through the complicated settings he rarely touched, and pulled up his blocked numbers list. There, listed starkly in the middle of the screen, was the entry, "Mary Smith mom's cell, blocked 5 weeks ago." It was an act of calculated, malicious cruelty. The nausea was overwhelming, worse than the smoke inhalation from the worst fire. He had been so focused on saving strangers that he had even noticed the fire burning his own home, carefully stoked by the woman he had sworn to love. James slammed the phone on the counter, the sound echoing ominously in Lisa Hernandez's pristine kitchen. The realization of his wife's betrayal was a bitter bile in his throat, a poison far worse than anything he'd encountered in the worst smoke-filled He stared at his mother, who sat quietly, her frail shoulders still trembling. Lisa Hernandez gently guided him to a chair. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the training kicking in, assessed the situation, prioritized the victim. "Mom, look at me," he commanded, his voice low but steady. "Tell me everything." No hesitation. Mary raised her eyes, and the shame she carried was a palpable thing, a cloak of guilt she had wrapped around herself. "It started almost 5 weeks ago, right after you left for the Sierra Madre mission," she began, her voice a reedy whisper. "Jennifer Miller came over, Very charming, saying she was going to be my personal accountant while you were gone. She said she wanted to help me manage the generous sum you send us, $7,000. James felt a fresh wave of blinding fury. Irresponsible. His mother was the definition of ascetic discipline, having survived the loss of her husband and raised him on a meager salary. Mary continued, her eyes distant. She took my debit card, my checkbook, said she'd handle the shopping, that she'd buy only what was necessary for my diet. I objected, of course, but she just smiled that tight, polite smile of hers and said, "James trusts me with this." Mary, the phrase, "for your own good," felt like a blade turning in James's gut. The psychological torture, she explained, was gradual and insidious. First, the meals became Tania's single slice of dry toast for breakfast, a cup of lukewarm broth for dinner. When she protested, Jennifer Miller accused her of being a dramatic old woman with borderline dementia, suggesting she was fabricating her hunger. Then came the physical isolation. She put a heavy-duty combination lock on the pantry door, Mary confessed, wringing her skeletal hands. She claimed we had a rodent problem, that it was a health code violation to leave food unsecured. But I knew the code was only given to her and her sister, Michelle Lee. Mary's voice broke. The worst part, James, was the forced silence. She told me I was not allowed to use the landline, only the old cell phone, and only for emergencies. And every time I tried to call your number, she was always here, watching. I didn't want to cause trouble in your marriage. Son, you seemed so happy, so proud of your life. The notion that his mother, in her 73rd year, had endured calculated starvation and isolation to protect his happiness shattered him completely. Lisa Hernandez silently refilled Mary's broth bowl, tears streaming down her face. James could only sit, his massive frame shaking with suppressed rage. He managed to ask, remembering the kind-hearted cleaner who had been with their family for 2 decades. Mary's lower lip trembled. Oh, poor Martha Baker. She was my only ally. Martha Baker, bless her soul, noticed she started bringing me small portions of leftovers from her own home, tucked away in her cleaning supplies. A few weeks ago, on a Saturday, Jennifer Miller caught her. Martha Baker had just slipped me a homemade muffin. Jennifer Miller didn't even yell. She escorted her out of the house and told her never to return. The full horror culminated in a searing memory that Mary reluctantly shared. It was my birthday a few weeks ago. My 73rd, I didn't expect much, but I hoped. Maybe a simple cup of tea? Jennifer Miller and her sister, Michelle Lee, threw a small party for themselves and their friends that evening. Expensive wine, catering, music. They didn't even acknowledge me. I sat in my room, listening to the laughter. Later, after they all left, I was so desperate, James, I couldn't sleep. I crept down to the kitchen, and I saw the garbage bin overflowing with leftovers. She stopped, unable to continue, her eyes glistening with the raw pain of that humiliation. I took a piece of the cake, she finally admitted, her voice barely audible. It was stale and tasted of garbage, but it was the sweetest thing I'd had in weeks. James shot up from his chair. The firefighter in him, the hero who rushed into danger without a second thought, was eclipsed by a primitive, roaring rage. He needed to be alone. He needed air. He needed to fix this. Thank you, Lisa Hernandez. I'm taking Mom home now. He helped Mary into the truck, wrapping her securely in a thick blanket he retrieved from his duffel. As they pulled out, his phone rang. It was Jennifer Miller. He answered, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Where are you, Jennifer Miller? I'm home. Her voice, usually perfectly pitched and honeyed, was instantly sharp with panic. James, thank God I was worried about you. Stop talking, Jennifer Miller, he interrupted, his tone chillingly devoid of emotion. I know everything. I have the emails. I have the blocked numbers. I have a neighbor's sworn statement that my mother was begging for spoiled food on her birthday. The line went silent, a vast, echoing vacuum. When she finally spoke, the honey was replaced by brittle ice. She exaggerates, James. She's unstable. My money, Jennifer Miller, was meant for her comfort, not for your malicious control. You blocked the only way she had to reach me. You stole her dignity. Pack a bag. When I get home, you'll be gone. Our lawyers will handle the rest. I'm filing for immediate divorce. He hung up before she could utter another false word, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Back at his house, after settling Mary safely on the sofa with a warm compress, James went straight to his home office. He called his closest friend, Robert Williams, a sharp, merciless forensic accountant. "Robert Williams, I need everything." Within the hour, Robert Williams was remotely accessing Mary's bank records. The picture was even more devastating than James had feared. The $7,000 monthly transfers had indeed been made, but they were immediately siphoned out, usually within 12 hours, into a complex web of shell accounts. "It's not just the money you sent. Ace," Robert Williams' voice crackled over the speaker. "She opened 5 different lines of credit in Mary's name, used your mother's social security number, forged her signature on credit applications. The total debt is $95,000, and that's not including the utility lien. And Luke Carey, the bulk of the stolen cash went into one primary account, Michelle Lee Holdings, LLC. That's your wife's sister, right?" The final pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, grotesque and complete. Jennifer Miller hadn't just tormented his mother out of spite. It was a cold, calculated scheme of financial abuse, a way to fund her and her sister. Michelle Lee's lavish entrepreneurial dreams using the silent suffering of an old woman. It was grand larceny, compounded by elder abuse charges. The fireman felt his exhaustion evaporate, replaced by crystalline clarity and purpose. He had faced fire, but now he faced a corruption that burned colder and deeper, and he would not rest until every last piece of the injustice was incinerated. And tell me, imagine you are Mary's neighbor, Ruth Jackson. What is the single most concrete, actionable piece of advice you would give James right now? Something beyond call the police. Share your deepest thoughts in the comments below. The pre-dawn light found James Smith awake, hunched over his desk, studying the police report drafts and the forensic accounting spreadsheets. Mary, after a nourishing meal and a sedative prescribed by Lisa Hernandez, was finally resting, the first deep, untroubled sleep he knew she'd had in weeks. The house felt cleansed, the malevolent atmosphere of Jennifer Miller's presence gone, replaced by a tense but purposeful energy. Robert Williams arrived early, his expression grim. "The bank has confirmed the forgery on the loan documents, Ace. The title company is checking the property deeds." James's hand clenched into a fist. She had tried to steal the very roof over his mother's head, the physical repository of 40 years of memories. As they worked, the doorbell rang. James opened it to find not Jennifer Miller, but his entire street, Ruth Jackson, Lisa, and a dozen other neighbors, including Martha Baker, the fire cleaner. They weren't holding pitchforks. They were holding envelopes and notebooks. "We came to put a stop to this," James Ruth Jackson declared, her voice firm. "We've all compiled our documentation. We saw the forced isolation. Lisa Hernandez documented her begging incidents. Martha Baker has her employment contract and evidence of her wrongful termination. And David Miller," she pointed to an elderly gentleman next door, "was told by Jennifer Miller that Mary was being put into a care facility next month." This unified community action, this overwhelming tide of support for Mary, was the first real comfort James had felt. Then the phone rang. It was the boutique. "Captain Smith, your wife, Jennifer Miller, and her sister, Michelle Lee, are here, attempting to liquidate the store." James grabbed his keys. "Keep them there. Do not let them leave." He drove with a cold, righteous focus to the high-end mall where Michelle Lee's upscale boutique, Vance Looks, was located. It was a cathedral of betrayal. Every velvet rope, every custom light fixture, every designer garment paid for with the systematic starvation of his mother. He strode through the polished marble corridors, past the bewildered shoppers, and entered the store. Jennifer Miller and Michelle Lee were scrambling, throwing clothes into trash bags, their faces stained with tears and desperation. "James, please," Jennifer Miller pleaded, running toward him. He held up a hand, stopping her cold. $95,000 of fraudulent debt, Jennifer Miller. Forged loan documents, elder abuse, and attempting to steal my mother's home. That's not a misunderstanding. He watched as the police entered, followed by a local news crew that Ruth Jackson had quietly alerted. Michelle Lee tried to run out the back, but Robert Williams and David Miller were already waiting. The sight of his wife being read her rights, her designer coat clutched to her chest, felt not like triumph, but like the sickening release of toxic pressure. The cameras flashed, documenting the downfall of the predator. Later that day, back home, Mary was sitting at the kitchen table, watching the local news coverage of the arrests. James sat beside her, holding her hand, which no longer trembled with hunger, but with the shock of justice. "I saw her son, Jennifer Miller," Mary murmured, her eyes distant. James braced himself for the inevitable question, "Should we forgive her?" "I want you to know, James," Mary continued, turning to face him, her eyes clear, "I forgive her. Not for her benefit, but for mine. Carrying that hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But forgiveness is not the same as excusing the crime." The emotional breakthrough was profound. "And you, my son," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in years, "I need you to forgive yourself. You feel guilt. I see it. You think you failed me by being away, by trusting her. But you didn't fail me. She was a master manipulator. My choice was to suffer in silence to protect your life." The following week, the local paper ran a front-page story on Mary's courage and the community's mobilization. The city council, spurred by the public outcry and the viral news footage, immediately passed a motion to establish a dedicated senior advocacy and protection center. The mayor, James respected, called him personally, "Captain Smith, your mother's story is the catalyst this city needed. We need a place where our most vulnerable can report abuse safely." The mayor offered Mary the role of founding director, citing her unique perspective and profound empathy. The Mary Smith Center for Senior Dignity was born. 6 months later, the center opened its doors. It was a warm, bright place, not a sterile government office. Martha Baker was hired as the administrative coordinator, providing the essential human touch. Lisa Hernandez taught nutrition and cooking classes. Mary, no longer frail, stood tall, guiding new visitor seniors who came in with fear in their eyes, just as she once had. She greeted them all with a quiet authority and a deep understanding. "You are safe here," she would say. The final turning point came on a cool October evening. James walked into the center's kitchen and found Mary surrounded by 3 generations of neighbors, baking a massive chocolate sheet cake, the kind his father had loved. She looked up, her smile brilliant, her silver hair shining. "The kitchen's a bit loud, but I wouldn't trade it," she said. James sat beside her, watching her confidently mix the batter. "I learned that the deepest hunger, James, isn't for food. It's for connection, for knowing you matter." James hugged her tightly, inhaling the comforting scent of vanilla and the familiar, deep scent of home. "You didn't just survive, Mom," he whispered. "You became a force for change." Mary patted his cheek. "And you, my firefighter, you learned that true heroism isn't just rushing into the flames, but recognizing the fire right under your own roof." The story of the firefighter and his mother didn't just end with justice. It ended with purpose. It was a powerful reminder that vigilance must extend beyond our professional lives, and that sometimes the greatest treasures our families are the ones we must cherish with our immediate presence, not just our absent money. Thank you for watching Mary and James's journey. We are so happy to welcome you to our growing community. If you found strength in Mary's story, please take a moment to sign up for our channel right now. We have many more stories of courage and overcoming adversity to share with you. We want to hear from you too. Tell us in the comments below, which city or country are you watching our stories from? Did you love this video? And what is the single biggest lesson you learned from Mary's journey toward justice and forgiveness?